Hi, it's Laura. Good morning. Oh my gosh, it's Friday morning and I haven't finished the second episode yet, but I'm going to do it somehow. I wanted to thank you all for all of you who subscribed and left comments and called me and wrote me, and it was wonderful. Thank you. It's still awful out there, so I'm so glad that you decided to come and join me and the class of 74 to get away for a while and have some fun. This is a podcast serial, meaning the story is told in episodes. So if you haven't started at episode 1, please go and start at episode 1. We're still on the first day of school in September of 1971. Thank you for coming. Episode 2. High school is a complicated business. Cynthia Schuyler to the front office immediately, said the announcer over the PA system. That's Cynthia Schuyler to the front office. This couldn't be good. They'd only been in school for 25 minutes and she was already being summoned to the office. Annabelle had bolted upright to look at her with wide eyes. Cynthia's eyes were wide, too. She pushed her chair back and stood up, slinging a purse over her shoulder. Was it because she had been seen smoking and was only 15? No, that couldn't be it. Could it? You're Cynthia, the homeroom teacher, Mr. Bojanski asked. When she nodded, he consulted a piece of paper, leaned over to write something on it, and held it up for her to see. I've marked you on the attendance sheet as having arrived on time, so if there's any problem, let me know. Thank you, she said, wondering if that meant Mr. Bojanski expected her to lie for him and say he had been on time too. Mr. Bojangles likes our Cynthia, Ralph whispered. That's enough, the teacher snapped. Then he made a waving motion with his hand, indicating that Cynthia was to get moving. Good luck, Annabelle called softly. Outside in the empty hall, Cynthia liked the way her heels sounded over the linoleum. Fortunately, she had attended the school tour in June, so she knew the general direction of where the front offices lay. Morning announcements over the PA had resumed, but the closer Cynthia got to the intersection of C, B, and A wings, the more unintelligible they became because the different echo intervals of each wing made it sound like three men talking over each other. It got better after she turned left and headed up the main hall, which ran parallel to a big raised cafeteria area on the left. This was where 10th and 11th graders were supposed to eat lunch or spend their study halls. But right now it was serving as a temporary homeroom for 10th graders who had not been assigned one. Cynthia was slightly agog at how many students were there. The post-war baby boom had been wreaking havoc with the Brighton school system for years. This very building, where Brighton taxpayers had been promised would produce 250 college-ready graduates every year, was overwhelmed from the day it first opened in 1960, when 20% more students arrived than had been planned for. The school board frantically redrew plans to restructure the four-year high school into 3, for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and crammed enough portable classrooms onto the campuses of the 2 junior highs to absorb 9th grade. Cynthia's class, the class of 74, kids born in 1955 and 56, was the largest ever and had materialized the school board's every nightmare every year as the group moved through the system. And now the class of 74 had arrived at Brighton High, all 370 of them. Cynthia waved to a few kids in the cafeteria. Over the PA system, the announcer explained the new modular scheduling system had to be modified, and while students were to follow the schedules they had in hand today, they must pay close attention to every subsequent announcement because certain blocks of time were going to periodically shift in different ways. This made absolutely no sense to anybody. The only thing 10th graders barely understood about the modular schedule system was they had to give up a Saturday morning to stand in long lines to not get the classes they wanted because they were the low men on the totem pole. The bell rang, signaling the end of homeroom, and the crowd in the cafeteria came alive. Cynthia picked up her pace, moving through students to reach the split-level staircase up to the administrative front offices. When she arrived at the reception desk, she saw a man with a beard winding up a power cord, which he set down next to a large microphone on a metal console with gauges on it. Next to it was a 5-bar metal xylophone and a mallet. He must be the announcements man. Now he was raking a bunch of different papers into a pile. Mimeograph sheets, sheets of typing paper, lined notebook paper, a sheet of stationery, index cards. There was even a large piece of a brown paper bag that had writing on it. "Phew," he said loudly, but no one except Cynthia was paying any attention. He smiled at her, gestured to the papers, and in a deep voice said, "Far too many for artistic rendering today." She laughed. The bell marking the start of first period rang. "Good job, Mr. Zollner," a harried-looking lady called as she breezed past. "Thank you, Mrs. Marsh." The lady called Mrs. Marsh backtracked. She was under duress, Cynthia could tell. Her hair was slipping out of her bun and half her lipstick was rubbed off. "I'm afraid we threw everything but the kitchen sink at you today." "A sink might be in here somewhere," he joked, picking up the messy pile of papers with 2 hands. "Do you want any of this back?" "Heavens, no." She turned to Cynthia. "May I help you?" "My name was called to come here. Cynthia Schuyler." "Ah," she said, approaching the counter. She smiled briefly. "I used to attend Mrs. Riddendale's piano recitals at your house." Cynthia smiled politely. She had hated piano because she wasn't any good at it. When after 3 years her mother finally came to agree that it was a lack of talent, not a failure to practice, Cynthia was allowed to stop. And her mother was liberated from making Mrs. Riddendale's sickly sweet sugar and ginger ale punch and choreographing the entrances and exits of terrified kids through their living room. "Theater 323 could use a good piano player," the announcer called. "We don't have time to discuss it now, Mr. Zollner." Her duress had returned. "Mimi Watson's nose is broken," she told Cynthia. "She needs to be taken to the hospital, but there's no answer at the Watsons' house, and Mimi doesn't know where her mother is." Cynthia felt guilty because she'd forgotten all about Mimi. "Your mother is the backup name we have on file, but there's no answer at your house either. Do you have any idea where your mother is or where she might be reached?" Cynthia said she thought her mother was playing tennis at the club. "Good, let's try there," Mrs. Marsh said. She brought out a phone book and plunked it down on the counter. While they looked up the number for Woods End Country Club, a man in shirt sleeves and tie, fiddling a pen in his hand, came up to stand behind Mrs. Marsh. He cleared his throat. Without looking, Mrs. Marsh tapped the listing in the phone book, pushing the black telephone in front of Cynthia, and said, "Please see if you can reach your mother while I help Dr. Mullen." Cynthia knew that name. He was the principal. Cynthia dutifully dialed the number while Dr. Mullen and Mrs. Marsh talked in whispers. When the club receptionist answered, Cynthia asked to be connected to the tennis house. Alec, the tennis pro, picked up on the first ring. He said he had just seen Mrs. Schuyler and would run down to court 6 to get her if it was important. Cynthia said it was. She turned to make the OK sign at Mrs. Marsh, but she was following Dr. Mullen somewhere. "What's wrong?" her mother asked breathlessly when she came onto the line. "Nothing's wrong with me, Mom," she said quickly. It's Mimi. She broke her nose and needs to go to the hospital, but they can't reach Mrs. Watson, and you're next on the call list." Cynthia heard tennis balls being walloped in the background. "Mom, doesn't Mrs. Valadares know where Arabella is?" Mrs. Valadares was the Watsons' housekeeper. "I don't think she's there," Cynthia said. "I didn't see her car there this morning." More tennis balls were being walloped. Cynthia knew her mother was not overly fond of Mrs. Watson, much less doing favors for her. "How did poor Mimi break her nose?" "It's sort of a long story," Cynthia said, as the bell signaling the beginning of first period rang. There was a sigh of resignation on her mother's end of the phone, and then, "Tell Mimi and the school I will be there in 20 minutes. Cynthia hung up the phone and looked around for Mrs. Marsh. A man was mimeographing something in the corner, filling the air with the pungent scent of copy fluid. A tiny lady was standing on her tippy toes to put flyers in the teacher's pigeonhole mailboxes, and a janitor was sweeping a big pile of green sawdust around on the floor. But no Mrs. Marsh. Mimi had to be around here somewhere. Cynthia wandered out the front office area, looking around. She went a short way down a hall and spotted a sign. Nurse. Aha! The door was open, so Cynthia peeked around the corner. Mimi was curled up on her side on the examination table, holding an ice bag to her face. The fluorescent orange Mary Janes were neatly placed underneath, side by side. They appeared to be Mimi's only items of clothing without blood on them. The nurse, dressed in a white uniform and starched white cap, was sitting at a desk across the room doing paperwork. When Cynthia stepped into the doorway, she looked up. "Yes?" Cynthia explained her mother was coming to take Mimi to the hospital. She nodded. "Very good, thank you." "But where's my mother?" Mimi suddenly wailed, backhanding the ice bag through the air into the wall. The nurse jumped, startled, but then she looked at her watch, shrugged, said she needed to take it off for a while anyway, and went back to her paperwork. Mimi started to cry. "Your mom's probably just at the store or something," Cynthia said. "She'll turn up soon. Don't worry." "But why does she have to turn up?" Mimi asked, miserable. "Why can't she just be there? Where is she?" If Mrs. Watson was her mother, Cynthia would be glad she was not coming because she'd have that icicle stare going when she did. "Ah, there you are, Cynthia," Mrs. Marsh said from the doorway. Cynthia turned. "I couldn't find you, and my mom asked me to tell Mimi she was coming." "Good thinking." Then Mrs. Marsh told the nurse a student had just thrown up in A-Wing and was being brought to her. Cynthia couldn't bear people throwing up and made a beeline for the door. But Mrs. Marsh caught her arm, told her they were in the first period now, and she needed a pass to get into class. She pointed the way to the vice principal's office, Dr. Eagleton, who would write her a pass. Cynthia said bye to Mimi and strolled over to wait outside the vice principal's office. A senior was inside, Suzanne Sayer, who had been one of Cynthia's heroes in 7th grade. Suzanne had been a pretty girl then, in 9th grade, but now she looked old enough to be in college. Cynthia swallowed, wondering if Suzanne was going to cut her dead too. The vice principal, Dr. Eagleton, was sort of a goofy-looking guy. He was thin, had short, wavy blonde hair, wide-rimmed glasses, red puffy lips, and wore a handkerchief in his breast pocket that matched a dumb-looking bow tie. Cynthia watched his big Adam's apple move while he talked on the phone. He took some notes, covered the phone to ask Suzanne a question, talked a little more on the phone, nodded, listened, nodded, and hung up. Then he said something to Suzanne in a low voice, and they both laughed. Suzanne even laughed like a grown-up now. The vice principal waved Cynthia in. When she saw the spark of recognition in Suzanne's eyes, followed by a smile, she flushed with happiness and said hi. Suzanne said hi back and told the vice principal Cynthia had been student council president last year at Dean Junior High. Dr. Eagleton didn't appear to be listening, though. You need a pass, right? He asked, pulling a pad out of the center drawer of his desk. Yes. Out of the corner of her eye, Cynthia saw Suzanne was checking out her outfit. Dr. Eagleton reached for a ballpoint pen, checked his watch, and clicked the pen over the form. Name? Cynthia Schuyler. She spelled her last name. He frowned and sat back in his chair. You were at the Watson girls' accident this morning. She nodded. Dr. Eagleton apologized to Suzanne, saying she had to excuse them for a few minutes. Rising from her chair, Suzanne murmured it was okay, told Cynthia she'd see her around, and glided away. Long, straight hair, pink lipstick, plaid skirt, pink sweater, perfect. Suzanne was really smart, too. The vice principal sat forward to fire questions across his desk at Cynthia. Where did the accident occur? Who else was there? What happened? Did she see the accident with her own eyes? Or did someone else tell her what they saw happen? No, I saw it, she told him. I was standing right there. Was the accident Edgar's fault? Who's Edgar? Cynthia asked. The driver of the car, Edgar Trapezzano. Oh, Cynthia said, we've always called him Jocko. The vice principal paused and then said, fine, Jocko, then. He cleared his throat. Was Jocko at fault? She shook her head. I don't think so. Then the bus must have been speeding. He was beginning to remind her of Eddie Haskell on Leave It to Beaver. She didn't like Eddie Haskell and she didn't like this guy. I don't think the bus was speeding. If the bus wasn't speeding, then Jocko must have been driving recklessly. Cynthia shook her head. He wasn't. No? No. He wrote something down. Did Jocko look both ways before pulling out? She nodded. Are you sure he did? She had no idea if Jocko had or not, but she nodded yes. She didn't want him to get him in trouble. All right then, now we're getting somewhere, he said, making more notes. He looked up from his pad. If Jocko looked both ways before pulling out, the bus driver must have been speeding. Cynthia frowned. She didn't want to get the bus driver in trouble either. Her parents said school bus drivers really needed their jobs. That's why she should be nice to them. I don't think it was anyone's fault, she said. It just happened. They didn't crash or anything. Dr. Eagleton flattened his fish lips into a line and said gravely, a student was injured and must be taken to the hospital. My mom's taking her, Cynthia said. We're lucky no one's dead, he muttered. Then he scribbled a pass, tore it out of the book, and handed it to her. She thanked him and left. She did not like him. There was something really creepy about him. As she was leaving the front office area, she saw Suzanne Slater go back into Dr. Eagleton's office. She wondered if he was her advisor or something. Cynthia examined the pass. He had given her 12 minutes to get to chemistry. That was a lot of time. She skipped down the stairs from administration, went out the door to the smoking area, walked out a couple of feet, and lit up. If anyone asked, she would brazen it out and say she was 16. Can I bum a cigarette? A guy wearing a suede fringed jacket asked her. His brown hair was long, his features were good, but his skin was bad, very bad. In this weather, he must be hot in that jacket. Sure, she said, holding out the pack. I ripped them off from my mother. He snickered and selected a cigarette. Then he produced a Zippo and in one fluid movement swung the lighter down to strike against his thigh and produced a flame. She watched his cheeks hollow as he lit a cigarette. How did you do that? He said it was the angle. You had to get it just right. The downward movement pushed the lid open, exposed the flint, and friction on the wheel did the rest. Do you want to get out of here? He suddenly asked. I've got a car. We could go to Pound Ridge and get some beer. Gosh, Cynthia laughed a little, nervous. Did she look like she was a fast girl? Thanks, but I'm doing chemistry. Don't you have a class? I don't go to school here. I go to Exeter, and we don't start school until next week. Exeter. Whoa, a Richie Rich. She knew a lot of kids who went to boarding school, but none of them looked the way this boy did. His sneakers were dirty. He leaned close. I'm kidding, he told her. He took a drag from his cigarette, stuck a hand in his pocket, and rolled back on his heels to blow a few smoke rings. And I don't have a car, he added. My mom's divorced, and we're living downtown over the Chinese laundry, just so you know. Cynthia blinked a couple of times. What a strange boy. Why should I know? It's none of my business. Because, he said, your parents won't like it and they won't like me. Cynthia frowned, drawing on her cigarette. She exhaled smoke. What do my parents have to do with anything? Everything. He tilted his head slightly. They give you everything, don't they? Pretty much, she admitted, dropping her cigarette to the ground and stamping it out, preparing to leave. This boy was a real downer. But no one gave my father anything, she added. She picked up the butt, checked to make sure it was truly out, and threw it in the trash can. My father lived in an apartment with his mother, too, like you do, but over a hardware store. She didn't know why she felt annoyed with this boy. My dad's father died. The boy flicked his cigarette away. I wish my father would die. Then he couldn't hurt my mother anymore. Cynthia's irritation dissipated immediately. The boy turned to see how she was reacting to what he said. Cynthia's reaction was to change the subject. The Wangs used to own the laundry and live over it. Did they sell it? No, they still own it, but they bought a house in Norwalk, and they made 3 apartments out of upstairs to rent, to cash in on divorces. This was news to Cynthia. Her father had been picking up his shirts on Saturday mornings from the Wangs as long as she could remember. When her father sometimes sent her in with his claim ticket, she always felt funny inside when one of the kids brought the brown paper bundle containing her father's washed, ironed, and folded shirts to the front counter. She understood the Wangs had come here from China for a better life, but the kids were always in the shop on Saturdays, and they didn't even have a yard. She hoped they did now. There are 2 studio apartments, the boy said. The father's rent. One guy in there now is divorced and lives there because he wants to be near his kids. The other guy, I think his wife just threw him out because he drinks a lot. Nice guy, though. And you and your mom? We had the 2-bedroom apartment. It's way too small, but for some screwed up reason, my mom's obsessed with me attending this school. It's supposed to be very good, Cynthia said. Someone bumped Cynthia from behind. Move it, Cindy, a girl growled. Cynthia was standing on the asphalt walkway, and there was plenty of room to pass. She knew who the growling girl was. She was a senior called Mary Ann Corbett, who knew darn well Cynthia was never called Cindy. Sorry, Mary Annie, Cynthia said. Mary Ann swung her considerable weight onto one penny loafer and planted a hand on her hip. If your name's not Cindy, what is it? Cynthia. Oh, how la-di-da, Mary Ann sneered, turning on her heel. Snobby Cynthia. I can remember that. She's not a snob, Mr. Fringecoat, Exeter student protested. Shut up, pimple face, Mary Ann said over her shoulder before disappearing into the school. Cynthia looked to the ground, feeling sick. How much nastier could anyone be? She couldn't bear to look at the boy. The first time I took the bus home from school, she said, keeping her eyes on the ground. When I walked down the aisle to get off at my stop, Mary Ann unzipped my skirt and pulled it down to my ankles, in front of all the kids. And then she just laughed and laughed. Cynthia raised her eyes. Beneath his acne, the boy's skin was still pink with embarrassment. I know we're supposed to forgive and forget, but I will hate her guts until the day I die. He smiled a little. Only until then? They both laughed, and they both felt better, Cynthia could tell. Then he pointed to something behind her. She turned around to look. Someone was climbing out of a classroom window in B-Wing. The windows were hinged from above, and the bottom swung out. and the figure, a boy, had dropped into a crouch beneath the window and was pressing his back against the wall. But then a woman stuck her head out and looked straight down at him. "Whoops," Cynthia said. The student slowly stood up, brushing off his pants, and started to climb back in through the window, but the woman said something and vigorously pointed in their direction. Cynthia laughed a little. "She's telling him he has to come in through a door." The boy walking toward them was shorter than Cynthia, thinner, but very sharply dressed. He was wearing a blue and pink striped shirt with a long point collar, blue permanent press slacks, and brown leather stirrup boots. He was very tan. His hair was almost platinum, he was so blonde. His green eyes were exceptionally large, and his lips perfectly formed. He was clearly a boy, but Cynthia would describe him as beautiful, like a boy angel. "You almost made it," Mr. Fringecoat, fake Exeter student, called. The boy lifted his eyebrows as he approached them. His features really were beautiful. "She's a cow," he said. After a second, Cynthia and Mr. Fringecoat burst out laughing, and the boy smiled, seemingly despite himself. "Got a cigarette?" Cynthia gave him a cigarette. Mr. Fringecoat struck his lighter on his thigh again, and the newcomer ducked his head slightly to light it. He inhaled, took a furtive look over his shoulder, did a double take, let out an expletive, and turned sharply back around. "She's still watching me." Suddenly, the loudspeaker came alive beneath a metal awning. "Ding, ding, ding. Cynthia Schuyler to the front office. That's Cynthia Schuyler to the front office." Uh-oh. She'd lost track of time. "I've got to go." She walked backwards a few steps. "What's your name, anyway?" "Philip. Phil O'Brien." "Nice to meet you, Phil O'Brien," she said. She looked at Angel Boy. "Fred," he said. "Nice to meet you, Fred." "Except my name's not Fred," he said, tossing his cigarette, following her to the door. "I gotta go. Mademoiselle Cow is gonna have a cow." "Vache," Phil O'Brien said. "Mademoiselle Vache." Cynthia and not Fred looked at each other in surprise. "Tu ne vas pas bien, ton?" Phil asked. "I don't know what you're saying, but I gotta go," not Fred said, disappearing into the building. Holding the door, Cynthia called, "I am truly impressed." "Don't be," Phil called back. "I used to live in Paris, that's all." Paris. When Cynthia reached office reception, Dr. Eagleton flew at her. "Where were you? Why weren't you in class? I gave you a pass to chemistry and you disappeared." "I can take it from here," Mrs. Marsh quietly offered. "No, wait, I want to hear this." He crossed his arms over his chest. "Well, Miss Schuyler?" Cynthia couldn't tell him she was outside having a cigarette with a boy with bad skin and a lot of problems, and that another boy had climbed out of a classroom window and joined them. What to say? "I was in the bathroom," she said. "I had female issue to deal with." Female issue. That sounded lame. She guessed Mrs. Marsh thought so too, because she walked around the desk and simply led Cynthia away. Dr. Eagleton continued to watch her, frowning, arms crossed over his chest, one glossy brown ankle boot tapping the ground in irritation. "Your mother's been advised there's a lot of construction at Stamford Hospital and very little parking," Mrs. Marsh reported, steering her toward the front doors of the school. "Dr. Eagleton gave her permission to take you with her so you can go into the emergency room with Mimi while she finds somewhere to park." The Schuyler's navy blue and wood-paneled Country Squire station wagon was sitting outside on the circular drive. As she walked toward it, her mother climbed out to watch her, resting an elbow on the car roof. "Where were you? Dr. Eagleton said he couldn't find you." "I had a class change that wasn't on the office schedule yet," she said, opening the back door and climbing in. Ugh, the fibs were piling up. She better start keeping track. "They're modifying the modular system," she added. That part was true. "Spare me the details," her mother said, dropping into the driver's seat. She put the car into gear and pulled away, leaning slightly to push in the lighter. She had on her easy listening music. Her dad paid extra to get FM. The first thing Cynthia would do when she got her license would be to roll down all the windows and blast WPLJ. She scooted forward, resting her arms on the front seat. "How are you feeling, Mimi?" Her mother lit a cigarette and cracked her window. Cynthia wished she could have one. "I look like Suddy Liston," Mimi said. A New York tabloid had recently run a gruesome picture on its front page of the murdered boxing champion. Cynthia tried not to laugh because she wasn't sure Mimi was trying to be funny. She had some kind of packing in her nose that made her sound like Edith Ann on Laugh-In. "I told your mom you didn't have to come." "Are you kidding? I'm glad to be here. High school's awful." "How so?" her mother asked. "None of the seniors will talk to us." "Well, that won't last," her mother said, drawing on her cigarette. "But there was one who talked to me." Cynthia turned to Mimi. "Do you remember Suzanne Slater?" "Uh-huh. She was head cheerleader when we were in 7th grade. She was nice." "She's still nice, and she looks so boss memes, like she's in college or something." "I know Suzanne's mother," Mrs. Schuyler said. "She was queen of the daisy chain at Wellesley." Cynthia made a face and her mother laughed. "What is that?" "A spring festival. All the girls wore a chain of daisies on their heads and danced around on the lawns in white dresses. According to Mrs. Slater, she was elected queen because she was the most beautiful." "Suzanne's beautiful," Cynthia said. "Don't doubt that," her mother said. "But I hope for her sake she's a little less vocal about it than her mother." "Oh, there was another senior who talked to me," Cynthia remembered. "Horrible fatso Marianne Corbett, who shoved me and called me Cindy." No, my love," her mother said. "We don't call people names." "I'm still calling her horrible because she is," Cynthia said. "When I told her my name was Cynthia, she said, 'Well, la-di-da, snobby Cynthia.'" Her mother's eyes crinkled with a smile. "You? A snob?" She took a last puff of her cigarette and put it out in the ashtray. "I hardly think so, dear." "What else did I miss?" Mimi asked. "Oh, this big jerk called Evan a faggot in front of everybody." "Cynthia," Mrs. Schuyler cautioned. "Why?" "Because he's playing soccer instead of football." After a moment, Mimi decided, "But that's stupid. So what did Evan do after he called him a faggot?" "Mimi," Mrs. Schuyler said. "Evan told the jerk he wished he was a faggot because the jerk wanted to ask him out." Cynthia and Mimi laughed. "Girls, I am serious," her mother said. "I don't want you using that word. It's used as a weapon to hurt people." Cynthia didn't want to hurt anybody, except maybe Marianne. "I won't use it again," she said. "I won't either," Mimi promised. "Good," her mother said, a faint smile. "In my day, we used to say someone was a little loose in the loafers." It took several seconds for Cynthia to get it, but when she did, she couldn't stop laughing. That was exactly how her mother's hairdresser walked, flopping his loafers. "I don't get it," Mimi complained. "Good," Mrs. Schuyler said, "because the appropriate word to use these days is gay, though in polite society one doesn't discuss such things in the first place." "Oh, look at us, memes. We're polite society. Your mother will like that." Mimi and her parents were in something called the Blue Book, which was a director of snooty old families in America. The Watsons had a painting of Mimi's mother in their dining room wearing a long white gown, which for years Cynthia thought depicted her as a bride, but eventually learned no, it was Mrs. Watson at 18 when she was presented to society at a ball. Mimi was staring out her window, breathing heavily through her mouth. Mrs. Schuyler glanced over. "Mimi, are you all right, dear?" "My mother's going to use this as an excuse to lock me up at boarding school." "Oh, I'm sure that's not true," Mrs. Schuyler said. "It is true," Mimi said with sudden vehemence, slamming her fist on the seat. She wants me out of the way. Oh, Mimi, dear, Mrs. Schuyler said gently, if that were true, she would have sent you after 8th grade. My father wouldn't let her. But now, she turned away to look out her window. Cynthia was sitting back in her seat now. Her mother looked at her in the rearview mirror. She shrugged. She didn't know what was going on with Mimi. Everybody knew Mrs. Watson had wanted Mimi to go where she had gone to school, Dana Hall in Massachusetts. And everyone knew Mr. Watson had sided with Mimi and kept her home in Brighton. They did some easy listening for a couple of miles while Mimi calmed down. Cynthia knew she was feeling better when she asked why were they playing the $1 Million movie music on the radio. That's Tara's theme from Gone with the Wind, her mother said. It's the $1 Million movie from Channel 9, Cynthia echoed agreement. Girls, television didn't even exist when Tara's theme was published. When was that? Cynthia asked. September 1939. I distinctly remember because I saw Gone with the Wind the night before Canada declared war against the Nazis. Mimi looked at Mrs. Schuyler. You didn't have TV when you were young? What did you guys do at night? We listened to the radio. That must have been boring. Actually, it wasn't. I thought Pearl Harbor was in 1941, Cynthia said. It was. I thought that's when we went to war, 1941. That's when America went to war, her mother said, 2 years after the rest of us did. But thank heavens they arrived when they did, because there wasn't much left of us. She glanced at Cynthia. Your Uncle Reggie had been shot down by then. Shot down, Mimi said. You mean like in a plane? Her mother nodded. He was a pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Did he die? Yes, her mother said softly. Time to change the subject before her mom started crying. She had adored her older brother. Hey, Mom, guess what? Hay is for horses, not for your kind, sweet, and much beleaguered old mother. You forgot beautiful, Mom. She looked at Cynthia in the rearview mirror. But you didn't, sweetie. Thank you very much. You're welcome. You know the Wangs from the Chinese laundry? Yes. She pointed. That's our exit, girls. They cruised down the throughway ramp. They moved to Norwalk. They bought a house. Why, that's wonderful. They have worked so hard for so very long. Her mother raised a fist. Well done. You've made my day, Cynthia. I'm glad. Anyway, I met a boy who lives in the Wang's old apartment over the laundry. His mother's divorced. I guess that's why they're living there. Who is this, dear? Phil O'Brien. I used to know an Alice O'Brien, but she lived in New Canaan. They said they used to live in Paris. He speaks French. Well, now, isn't that something? Her mother marveled. Too bad he wasn't here. You were taking French. Cynthia had been so bad in French in junior high, the tutor her parents hired taught her advanced French for weeks when she was in level 1, but nobody realized it because Cynthia never knew which end was up anyway. As they neared the hospital, they had to zig and zag around trucks, scaffolding, temporary fencing, 2 cement mixers, and a tremendous crane. Mrs. Schuyler stopped in front of a cardboard sign where someone had scrawled ER and drew an arrow. The girls got out and followed the path through the construction to reach the emergency room, which was draped with giant sheets of thick, blurry plastic. They got in line behind a man with a cane who smelled like peppermint. A second nurse arrived at the desk, and the man insisted they go next. The nurse took notes while Mimi told her what happened. Then they filled in forms until they got stuck on an insurance question. Mrs. Schuyler sailed in, muttering they were going to have to travel through hell and high water before they ever found the car again. She finished the forms, told the nurse she'd write a check for services today, and she'd get reimbursed by her neighbor. Then she tried calling Mimi's house again, but there was still no answer. The nurse took Mimi and Mrs. Schuyler back through a set of curtains, and Cynthia walked around a little. Someone had left a hardcover book on one of the folding chairs. It was a library book, covered in plastic. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. She knew about this book from her brother. He said reading it would make her sad, but it was important she understand what had been done to the American Indian. She thumbed through the book, looking at pictures. It did look sad. She opened the back cover and saw a checkout slip from the Ferguson Library. Yikes! The due date stamp was June 15th. Cynthia quickly put the book down and moved away. Someone could go to jail for a fine like that. She took a seat in the corner, pulled Rosemary's Baby out to read, and covertly snuck looks over to see if the criminal returned for the book. Her mother came out to tell her they were waiting for a plastic surgeon. She sat down on the edge of the chair next to Cynthia, tugging at the hem of her tennis dress. Did you see Mrs. Watson at the house this morning? Through the staircase window. She saw me, but she didn't even wave. But she was still in her robe, she added, reconsidering the event. So maybe she was ducking because she didn't want Mr. Gagliardi to see her in her robe. Mr. Gagliardi was there? She nodded. He had all kinds of tools and pipes laid out in the driveway. I'm not sure what he was doing, but it looked like a big job. Her mother was staring across the waiting room. Cynthia followed her eyes, but there was nothing over there to look at. Mom? I need to get back to Mimi, she said, standing up. Read your book, sweetie. I hope we won't be too long. When they left Stanford Hospital, Mimi had a metal cup thing over her nose, held in place by a gigantic X of adhesive tape. The doctor said there wasn't much they could do about her nose at this point, except let it heal to see how it looked. Chances were they'd have to put Mimi under and re-break her nose so they could surgically set it straight. Maybe Cynthia didn't want a nose job. The doctor gave Mimi a note excusing her from school tomorrow and Friday, but Cynthia wondered what she was going to do after that. High school was hard enough. Nobody said much driving back to Brighton. Cynthia tried to think of a good reason why she should not be dropped off back at school, but couldn't think of one. The easy listening music on the radio suddenly stopped. Former Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev has died. He was 77. Then the music came back on. I wonder if they killed him, Mrs. Schuyler said. Cynthia, how do I get back to AM? Cynthia stretched out over the front seat, holding herself up with her left hand while switching the radio band with her right. It's on Dad's station. That's fine. Leave it there. They went over a bump, making Cynthia's support arm wobble a little, and her mother's arm shot up to hold her. I'm okay, Mom. You can let go. You're supposed to be wearing that seatbelt. And you're supposed to be wearing your seatbelt, Mom. I don't need it. I have the steering wheel. Girls, please, both of you, put on your seatbelts. There was a loud beep on the radio, and then, this is Bruce Elliott with news in detail from the WR newsroom. Former Premier Nikita Khrushchev, age 77, died of a heart attack in a Moscow hospital today. He was rushed to the city from his country home, where he has lived in seclusion since losing power in 1964. He went on and on about Khrushchev, but when it got to the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, and while Cynthia was thinking about crawling under her desk in an air raid drill, with horror she suddenly remembered she was supposed to meet Katie, the new girl, in the cafeteria for lunch at 11:30. She looked at the dashboard clock. It was 12:46. She cringed, visualizing Katie standing all by herself in the cafeteria, waiting, vaguely smiling because she knew no one, and waiting, expecting Cynthia at any second, but never arriving, the seconds turning to minutes. Oh, if someone did that to Cynthia, she'd never talk to them again. Well, all she could do was try and explain and apologize. Her mother dropped her off at school, and she headed to the front office to tell Mrs. Marsh she was back. Mrs. Marsh asked how Mimi was doing. She's better than she was, Cynthia said, but the doctor said she's going to have 2 black eyes for a week, and then they're going to turn green, and then yellow. Oh, Mrs. Marsh, what is Mimi going to do about school? I should think she'll come to school as usual. Cynthia stared at her in disbelief. with black and green and yellow eyes? Somewhere nearby, two men started arguing. Mrs. Marsh and Cynthia looked at each other as their voices grew louder. They sounded very angry. Then a door slammed, the shouting resumed, albeit muffled. "There are a lot of plates spinning today," Mrs. Marsh said matter-of-factly. She was talking about what the guy did on the Ed Sullivan show. It sounded like one of the plates just fell off the stick. "Have you had lunch?" Mrs. Marsh asked. She shook her head. "Go to the cafeteria, get something to eat, and then come back. By then, I'm sure Dr. Eagleton will be back in his office and he can write a pass out for you." Cynthia was thunderstruck. That was goofy Dr. Eagleton arguing? "Go," Mrs. Marsh said. She was hungry, and she did have 40 cents for a hot lunch. When she came down the stairs from the front offices, she saw Katie in the senior commons. What she was doing in there, Cynthia couldn't imagine because sophomores and juniors weren't allowed in there. But she was still so upset about having stood her up, she went in to apologize anyway, to explain where she had been and to say how truly, truly sorry she was. "Oh, it was fine," Katie said, dismissing it with a wave of her hand. "Evan came in, so when you didn't arrive, we ate lunch, and then he introduced me to a lot of kids." She made a face. "Too many, actually, because I couldn't tell you the name of a single one." She laughed that marvelous laugh and started to take off her white blazer. In the next instant, Teddy Hamilton appeared at her side to help her with it. Katie asked Teddy if he knew Cynthia, and he said, "A little." He smiled. "Everybody okay after the trouble you had this morning?" Katie's head kicked back in surprise. "That was you? In that old green car?" "I wasn't in it," Cynthia hastily assured her. "I was just walking by when the car had to stop suddenly, and my friend was thrown against the front seat." "Is this the one who broke her nose?" Katie asked. "The one that you took to the hospital?" Cynthia nodded. "Mimi Watson. You'll meet her." "Is she going to be all right?" Teddy asked, absently scratching at the back of his neck. The muscles in his arm were massive. The red polo shirt he was wearing also showed off broad shoulders and a narrow waist. His shirt tail was neatly tucked into a pair of off-white chinos, secured with the tooled leather belt. His thick brown hair was shorn for football, but it wasn't quite a crew cut. It looked good. He wasn't handsome in a traditional way. It was the overall package that made him attractive. He was a gifted athlete, a good student, had a reputation for being an all-round nice guy, and was very likely the most admired young person by adults in Brighton. He leaned to say something close to Katie's ear. They both smiled. Then Teddy said bye and headed for a table in the corner. "He's cute, isn't he?" Katie asked. "Very," Cynthia said. But Teddy was more of a grown-up man than a boy, and in the very unlikely event he ever asked Cynthia out, she wasn't sure she would accept. She had no intention of losing her virginity anytime soon, and she imagined the sexual expectations of such a spectacular senior would far exceed what she would be willing to give. She wondered how far Katie from California would go to keep him as a boyfriend. It was obvious Teddy liked her. "You haven't even been here a day," Cynthia observed, "and you've already overthrown the entire social hierarchy of the school." She laughed. "Hardly." She looked across the commons. "He sure is cute, though." "And convenient," Cynthia reminded her. "Just think, you'll only have to go out to get the mail, and you'll be on a date." "Oh, that's right. Wonder if we went out and I didn't like him." "Awkward." They laughed. Katie's teeth were perfectly straight. No way they got that way without braces. Cynthia wondered if she had to wear headgear at night or anything. "I've got to get going, Katie. I'm just so relieved I saw you and had a chance to explain what happened. I was wondering how I was going to find you because I didn't even know what your last name was." "Langston," she said. "And yours is Schuyler. I know because Evan did nothing but talk about you during lunch. He gave me your phone number, by the way. I hope you don't mind." Cynthia looked at her and closed one eye. Are you sure it isn't his number? Well, let's see. She rooted around in her purse, pulled out a scrap of paper, and read Cynthia the phone number. It was hers, all right. He said if I had any questions about anything in Brighton, you would be the best person to call. I hope you will call. Thanks. I will. Katie met her eyes. You know Evan's crazy about you, right? I know Evan's crazy, Cynthia conceded with a smile, and it will be a miracle if he doesn't get his head pounded in by that guy from this morning. Who was that Neanderthal anyway? Soccer requires more endurance than football, and it's only the most popular sport in the entire world. You are from California, Cynthia told her. Look, I really do have to get going. I'm starving and the school secretary's waiting for me to come back up to the office. You can go to the cafeteria straight through there, Katie said, pointing to a set of double doors. Can't, Cynthia said. She lowered her voice. Only seniors are supposed to be in here. We're allowed to come here in the mornings to buy coffee at that window, but that's it. No one's hassled me so far, and I've been in here since my schedule blew up after lunch. That's because no one knows who you are or what grade you're in, Cynthia said with a laugh. But plenty of people know I'm not a senior, so I need to get out of here before someone gives me a detention. Something Katie had said just sunk in. What do you mean your schedule blew up? She made an exploding sound, gesturing with her hands. I didn't have a single class on my schedule that was right, and I've been waiting around here until someone knows where to send me. Well, good luck, Cynthia said, backing out. Call me. I will. Cynthia left the senior commons, paused at the door to the smoking area, but decided she better not, and continued down the hall to the big cafeteria. When she reached the doors to the kitchen, she found them locked. Darn, she was too late. Where have you been? Cynthia whirled around to see Evan. You stood up the new girl. She quickly explained to him what happened. Oh, I knew something must have happened. You need to tell her so she doesn't think you just ditched her. I already did. I just saw her in the senior commons. No one in there knows enough to kick her out except for Teddy Hamilton, and he's not about to kick her out. He likes her? I think so. Evan waved to somebody. A lot of guys will be in line behind Teddy, he said. When she looked at him, he quickly added, not me, but a lot of guys are already talking about asking her out. Cynthia couldn't imagine what it would be like to win people over simply by existing. Think of all the extra brain power she'd have. She'd probably be in the National Honor Society. She looked at Evan. Do you have anything to eat? I'm starving, and I have to get back to the vice principal's office. I know where there's an apple. He walked down 2 tables. Guys, where's that apple? Snow White's over there, and she's hungry. Evan was a jokester, but never a clown like Ralph. He was much smoother, clever, earnest, honest. He had gone to Catholic school from kindergarten through 8th grade in Illinois and moved to Brighton for 9th grade when his father became chief of orthopedic surgery at Baynard Medical Center. He had been drawn to Cynthia like a magnet. For a while, she didn't know what to make of him. He was so nice. But he was also cool, good-looking, but also mischievous, but also extremely well-mannered. Cynthia's family adored him immediately, even her dad, who told him on first meeting, I like the cut of your jib, young man. Evan was basically a good Catholic boy who liked to smoke cigarettes and drink beer and laugh and hang out as much as Cynthia did, spending 3/4 of the year outside and over the winter in the finished basement of friends' houses whose parents didn't pay much attention about what went on downstairs. He brought her the apple, which she bit into immediately. Evan shifted his weight, watching her. Do you want to do something Friday night? She swallowed. Can't. I'm babysitting. How about Saturday? I'm caddying in the morning, carrying 2 bags, so I'll be rich. Boys made a ton of tips caddying, while girls were still stuck at $1 an hour babysitting. I'll even buy you a pizza, Cynthia. My parents are taking the boat out, but we can go to the beach. I'll get some beer. Evan really did have the best eyes and the longest lashes. She wiped the corner of her mouth with the back of her hand because she didn't have anything else to do it with. My parents are going to Forest Hills with the Fitzgeralds Saturday, and Annabelle's thinking about having a party. Don't let her, he said at once. The whole high school will crash it and trash her house. Come to the beach instead. I'll give Mark some gas money and he can drive us around. Mark was a junior and had a car. I should ask Annabelle. Great, I'll pick you both up. A dour-looking woman had been creeping up behind Evan. Quiet! This is a study hall, not a square dance. Evan and Cynthia looked at each other and cracked up. Sorry, ma'am. We were only laughing because you scared us. Sit down and be quiet or get out. Under his breath, Evan said to Cynthia, I guess we better dozy on dough out of here, and offered Cynthia his arm. But then they saw the Neanderthal guy from this morning barreling towards them. Evan was gone in an instant, sprinting across the cafeteria. But the Neanderthal clipped Cynthia in the shoulder as he lumbered by, sending her spinning into the wall. It scared her, but she was all right. When 2 more big guys rushed into the cafeteria, she moved behind a table. At the far end, Evan burst out the fire door to the outside, and everybody watched the 3 big boys heave and crash their way around tables and chairs across the cafeteria to finally plow through the fire door long after Evan had gone. Instantly, the room came alive with excited chatter. Cynthia slipped out to the hall to catch her breath. There was so much noise. She walked to the water fountain and took a long drink. She had to get back to Mrs. Marsh. She trudged up the stairs to the front office and found a long line of students waiting at the counter. She looked at what was left of her apple. Neanderthal man had smushed it into the wall, tossed it into the trash, and got into line. At the counter, Mrs. Marsh leaned out to the side to look down the line at Cynthia. Did you perhaps have a 7-course dinner? All the kids in the line turned to look at her. The cafeteria was closed, Mrs. Marsh. I had to scrounge around for an apple. Mrs. Marsh waved her up to the counter, told the others to wait. She'd be right back, making everybody groan and sigh and glare at Cynthia, and led Cynthia to the principal's office, explaining that Dr. Eagleton was gone for the day, so Cynthia must get a pass from Dr. Mullen. The last thing Cynthia felt like doing was going to a class. Mrs. Marsh brought Cynthia into the principal's office, where Dr. Mullen, who dressed amazingly like her father, was standing at the window, smoking a small cigar. This is Cynthia Schuyler, Dr. Mullen, Mrs. Marsh said, who helped her mother bring Mimi Watson to the hospital. She needs a pass to get into class. Schuyler, Dr. Mullen repeated, carefully tapping out the cigar in a windowsill ashtray. You're not related to Beth Schuyler, are you? Oh boy, here we go, she thought. Yes, sir, she's my sister. When the principal squinted, looking vaguely puzzled, Cynthia knew what he was thinking. How could she be related to the beautiful blonde, blue-eyed cheerleader with the perfect nose? We don't look very much alike. She takes after my mom, and I take after my dad. Beth's also 9 years older than I am. 9 years? He let out a low whistle as he made his way around the desk. Class of 65. Can it really be that long ago? He asked, looking around his massive desk for something. Tell me what Beth Schuyler is up to these days. She lives in Los Angeles and she plays a nun on World of Love, she told him. That's a soap opera. Really? He said, looking at her. She nodded. It's on at 4:00, Monday through Friday. So if you want to see her. Mrs. Marsh came into the office, handed Dr. Mullen a pad of passes, and departed. He sat down, looked at his watch, and started writing. That certainly has the looks to be a very successful actress, he said as he finished up. He tore out the pass and came around from behind the desk to hand it to her. I'm not sure how successful she'd be as a nun, though, he added, laughing. Cynthia smiled politely. When you next speak to her, will you tell her that Dr. Mullen was asking after her and that he sends his very best regards? Cynthia promised she would. She passed on messages like this to Beth from men all the time, to which her sister most often responded in her nun's voice, "Merciful God, save me." They heard a siren blaring outside. Dr. Mullen immediately left his office, nearly colliding with Mrs. Marsh. "Dr. Mullen," she said, clutching his arm, "there's been a very serious altercation in the student parking lot. The police are here." Evan, Cynthia thought. Oh, wow. Poor Cynthia. What a day. We're not even through the first day of school and all this stuff is happening. I'm so glad you came. I hope you were entertained. I hope I was able to take you out of your own head and out of this world for a little while. Now, next Friday, we'll have a new episode. If you want to share stories with me about your ill-spent youth, please write an email to classof74podcast@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook group. I hope you guys have a fabulous week. I'll see you on Friday. And really, thank you so much for all of your feedback and comments. You're just super. I'm just having a blast, and it's because you guys are making it a blast. Thank you. Take care. We'll see you. Remember, we don't drink and drive anymore. Ever.